Robert Plank Show, episode 53, Journaling and Documenting. The amazing and almost too simple shortcut to killer productivity, multiplied results, and increased sales.
3, 2, 1.
Welcome back to the Robert Plank Show. This is the exciting, action-packed podcast where Robert Plank, the #1 internet marketer from Turlock, California, divulges his deepest, darkest, and most closely guarded secrets when it comes to internet marketing and making more than a full-time living online from less than a part-time effort. We're about to bring out the man, the myth, the legend, Robert Plank, on stage, and he's going to share a money-making technique with you that's so simple and powerful, and yet most people don't know to do it. As soon as you start using this technique, you'll start to see huge multiplied results coming back to you. Mr. Robert Plank, just what is the #1 secret to your successful online money-making business?
Most problems in my business are never fixed by a crazy solution or a fancy piece of software. How many different web hosting accounts do you own on different web hosts? How many different shopping cart solutions do you have accounts for? How many affiliate programs are you registered for? Probably a lot. Probably more than one. It's so easy to think that out of everything you've been doing, the reason why you're unhappy or failing is because you just don't have a one-click upsell, or because your website isn't mobile responsive, or because your prices don't end in the number 7, or your prices don't end in the 95 cents at the end. So it's always easy and it's always fun, and we almost want to believe that everything that has been ailing us up to this point can be solved by a magic pill, a magic wand. But usually it's just something really, really simple. Something as simple as don't check your phone and your email until afternoon. Something as simple as use a help desk, or use blank payment processor, use PayPal to take payments, or use WordPress to run your blog. I mean, there are so many things where it's easy for us to sign up for 5 different possibilities, but if someone said out of these 5, just use this one, that would shortcut 25 or 35 steps just this week alone. So how do you actually do it? How do you actually stick to everything you're doing and finish what you're starting? And don't worry, I'm not going to tell you to perform 4 tasks in your business every day, even though that's what I do. But what we're going to talk about is a real system to either avoid or plow through the usual things that trip you up. Because if you think about it, usually when you get tripped up or stopped or stalled or delayed or whatever, it's usually because of one of 3 things or a combination: either scope creep, procrastination, or distraction. So scope creep means that you plan on something simple, and the more you think about it, the bigger and bigger, more exciting it gets. So the next thing you know, it's this big, huge behemoth of a monster, and it's nowhere close to what you wanted when you started, right? You say, okay, well, I want to create a piece of software, and I want to create a shopping cart kind of software where someone can create their own online store and list products and take payments. Cool. But what if I supported all these payment processors? But what if I hosted the site for them? But what if I put in an emailing system so now they could go and send emails, and you see how now this thing you created that was a 1-week job for a programmer is now a 1-year job for a team of programmers. The next problem is procrastination. You know what that means? It means I'll get to it later. It means, well, I could go ahead and create a product, right? Because I know that, well, if I create something that people want, like if I make that shopping cart software, or if I make the next Angry Birds kind of app or a game, and it can be even simpler than Angry Birds, and maybe different enough to not be plagiarism, but something that's just that simple, like just a quick little iPhone game, right? But I could do that, but what might be even more fun is I should create a brand. I should start a blog. I should start a podcast. I should record some Periscope videos. So the thing that happens with procrastination is there are a small number of activities that will make us money and an unlimited number of activities that won't make us money. And so it's like a numbers game, right? It's so easy for all the fun but non-money making ideas to outnumber the small number of money making ideas that are right there in front of us. And then there's distraction. it's easy for certain things to get away from you because you never know if the business equivalent of your toilet overflowing might happen, right? Here's what I mean. You sit down at your computer early in the morning, got your cup of coffee, you're ready to bang out some articles or bang out your next book. Suddenly, you get a big rush of water coming in from your bathroom. Oops, your toilet backed up. Well, you don't want that. That's not good, and it's impossible to ignore a backed up toilet. But the business equivalent of this is you sit down and write your book, and suddenly this email comes in saying, you gotta buy this bright, shining object. If you don't buy this, your whole business doesn't even matter anymore. You gotta buy this thing, you buy it, and then you get distracted, and then you buy access to a membership course with some videos, you watch half the videos, get distracted again by the next bright shiny object coming in, and what you end up with at the end of the week are about 10 or 20 things that you started on, because starting and finishing are both fun, but that middle part is the part that's not so fun. So what we have to do is go in small baby steps and shorten that middle part as much as possible. So, scope creep, procrastination, and distraction. Well, the answer I'm going to give you today is a couple things, but to start off with is to have a checklist. If you don't have a checklist, then you'll miss important steps, and it's just that simple. I'll give you an example. Recording and publishing this podcast, there are a few steps to this, right? I need to outline a couple of quick things I want to talk about. I have to do a test recording first to make sure that my microphone's plugged in correctly. I have to actually perform the dang thing. I have to set the tags just right and put an image for the cover for this podcast in there. I have to set the tags for the title and the URL. I have to upload this to the file hosting service. I have to make a blog post and post a link to it. I have to hire someone to listen to this podcast and type up some show notes for me so I can put those in the blog post as well. And if any step along the way, if I forget something or mess something up, or I say, well, I know I'm going to save the audio to this, but what was the setting again? Was it a 128 kbps or a 192 kbps? And if you don't know what that means, well, if it's in the checklist, you don't even have to know what it means, just that when the right pop-up appears, you check the right box. So even something that might be as simple for me as making a podcast, if it takes, 10 or 15 steps, then those are things that you need to have written down. So that way, even though it seems silly to you, you just go through the steps to make sure that you don't miss anything, because as you achieve mastery on certain skills, you're going to just blow through it faster and faster until you become sloppy. And by the way, what's cool about me and my courses is that most, if not all, of our courses contain checklists. So when you join our podcasting course at podcastcrusher.com, there is actually a checklist for everything along the way, from setting up your actual first podcast, because there's a couple steps in there to get the whole framework of it set up. And then there's a part about how to record your podcast. That's a section. And so when I go and record a new podcast, I just focus on those 10 parts of that podcasting checklist. Then when it comes to publishing, there's just a few quick things that need to be remembered. When it comes to marketing a podcast, there's that chunk of things. And so even for something like when you're running a webinar with GoToWebinar, we have a webinar course called webinarcrusher.com. And there is a section on how to create your PowerPoint presentation. There is a section on how to get attendees to register and pile into your webinar. There is a section on running and recording that webinar, a section on what to do after to remarket that old webinar and run paid advertisements to it and things like that. But even for something that I've done hundreds and hundreds of times, like webinars or like podcasts, you need to have a checklist. If you don't have a checklist, you'll miss steps. It's just that simple. So everyone brags and talks about systematizing and productivity, but do they actually do it? Well, no, probably not. Chances are, if someone's talking about productivity, I hate to say it, but usually they just read a book about productivity and they're repeating what they heard, or they tried all these different things of productivity and some of the things worked years ago, but honestly, they haven't kept up those good habits since, and the bad habits have crept back in. You might have heard advice like, if you have something coming up, use a tool called Google Calendar and set that block of time to do that thing. Now, Google Calendar is great for a couple of reasons, because if you have that master calendar, you can just go and just click it and see where something is, delete things, move them around. You don't have to do it with like a day planner or a plotter or things like that. With a Google Calendar, you can share, you can actually have multiple calendars, like one calendar for your family stuff, one calendar for this business, calendar for that business, one calendar just for you, and then you can share different calendars with different people, but the screen you're looking at has all the different calendars all in one place, all in different color codes. So you can share different parts of your business with different people and even control to what extent. So you can, for example, share your calendar to the extent where they see exactly what you're doing in this block of time, or share things so they just see that block of time is busy, but they don't have to know what you're actually doing with your family, just that is busy family time, but your family can see that it's whatever, soccer practice or dinner time or date night or whatever. And with Google Calendar, you can synchronize the calendar to your tablets and phones and all that good stuff, and even get a little pop-up when something on the calendar is coming up or has changed or been deleted or whatever that is. So appointments on the calendar is good to a certain extent until you start loading up appointments. Next thing you know, you look at today's agenda and there's 20 different things. You'll never get to them all. You get to maybe 2 or 3 and then move them all to the next day. Move them all to the next day. Next thing you know, the calendar just overflowing. So that's a good way to get overwhelmed. Now, to-do lists, where you just have a list of things you're going to do, that sounds good in theory, but what happens? You end up writing 20 or 30 things, you get 1 or 2 things done, you add 10 more things, you get 2 more things done, you add 10 more things. The to-do list grows faster than you can actually check things off. They never actually get finished. I know people who swear by tools like Evernote, like Dropbox, like Gmail. And if something like that works for you, then great. But just in my personal experience, everyone who's done this has seen success for maybe a month or 2 until the system actually takes over. They have such a crazy, complicated system that most of the time is dedicated to managing that system as opposed to getting something done. And so many times I just find that if I just throw out all the crazy convoluted systems and just go back to something simple, usually the simple thing is what I end up stick toing because I don't get too overwhelmed. So I'm definitely not one of those people who says, you need to have a checklist for everything. You need to have a checklist for checking your email. You need to have a checklist for writing blog posts. So that way, anytime that you don't want to write a blog post yourself, just hire someone and they'll go through that checklist. And I think that's on the right track. But what's not on the right track is making a dang checklist for every possible thing you might do, because then your whole day will be devoted to creating checklists that you'll never use in the future. What helps a lot better for me, what is more helpful for me, is looking back at what I did right when I was fumbling around, and then turn that into a checklist when I need to. So we'll talk about that in today's episode, journaling and documenting. And so a journal, well, it's just like what it sounds like. But what I'm going to be talking about today, every time I say journal or journal entry, I'm going to be talking about just maybe 3 quick sentences about something you did today. And that's it, just for today. So when we're talking about, making a system, making a checklist for your business, usually this is from the context of freeing up time in your day and probably hiring someone to replace yourself or replace part of what you do in your business. And what everyone thinks is that they can just hire someone to be an exact clone of them, and this person will just do exactly what I'm going to do, but for $5 an hour. And it never works that way. The person has no idea what you are doing. They take shortcuts. They say things are done when they're not. And so let me give you a couple of shortcuts and a couple of things to avoid the usual hiccups and headaches when it comes to hiring someone or when it comes to automating or outsourcing or delegating parts of your business. First of all, get this thing called a help desk, okay? If you're answering customer support queries over email, don't do it. Use a help desk instead, okay? So when we're talking about a help desk, you've probably dealt with a help desk from the other end before. This just means that if you go to, say, Apple, right, and you go to Apple's website, and there's an issue with your iPod, well, can you go and email Tim Cook right away, and Tim Cook will reply to you? Well, no. You click on a link, I think, and you open up what's called a ticket. And if it's not Apple, it's whatever company you're usually dealing with. You open up a ticket, And then that way, you type in your problem or type in your question. So then, now you've posted this question to a special web page. You can always log in back to your account and see that question you posted and see if someone's replied. And so when someone does reply, it shoots you an email saying, here's your reply. And you can see the back and forth all on one simple web page. Now, this seems like it's like something that's really simple, but just think about what this means from both points of view. It means that from like a customer point of view, if someone has a problem with one of your information products, right, or they have a problem with a piece of your software, and they have a problem, they can always go back and see if the problem was dealt with, and they can always go back and get to that answer later. And before I used a help desk, I always had this issue of customers emailing me saying, well, I emailed you about such and such last month or a year ago. You never responded. And I search my email and I say, well, I don't see your name in there. And I say, well, I swear I sent it and I can't find it in the sent folder. And I have to say, well, okay, well, I'm really sorry, but I just didn't receive your email. As opposed to if they post something in a customer help desk, that's stored. There's no email to be lost there. It is right there in the system. And in fact, most help desk systems, like we use Zendesk, most help desk systems, people can send an email to your special email address, and the process of them sending an email to you in itself opens up a help desk ticket. And this has probably happened to you, like if you've ever dealt with, I don't know, like some kind of thing where you have an account, a membership account, like maybe your cable company or maybe your web host. You shoot an email with a technical question and you instantly get a response saying, okay, well now you've opened a ticket and we'll have someone responding to you right away. So that's the first side of it, where someone can see exactly what the response there is. And then from the product creator side of it, right, from the business side of it, well, you can have just you responding to tickets at first, right? If you're just a one-person show, you can just log in there and respond to the tickets, and you can see the exact correspondence. And what sometimes people do is they'll email you like 5 times about something in a day. Have you ever had something like this? Well, if not, you need to sell more stuff, because if you haven't come across any of these little stories I tell you, then you haven't sold enough online. If you never had a refund online, you need to sell a lot more products. If you haven't had a customer yell at you for something that wasn't even your fault, you need to sell more products. So any kind of thing where you're selling online, you're going to have this very small percentage of little problems, and it's okay. That's just the way it is. So anyway, if someone happens to email you 5 times or email you every hour about the same problem, you just now got around to looking at the answers, you can click one button in a help desk and merge all 5 of their emails all into one. That way, if they go and check back in any of those 5 messages they sent, they all go back to the same place. So you only have to respond to those 5 emails exactly one time. So you can just be in there answering tickets, but if later on that becomes too much work for you and you need to hire someone to go in there and maybe just put in, half an hour a day and go in there and answer whatever tickets come in, well, you don't have to really do much. You just create an account for them in your help desk system. They log in, they see whatever tickets need answering, so if they are faster than you, they will answer the tickets. Or maybe you hire them to log in at night, so maybe you answer customer tickets during the day, and then they answer customer tickets at night. But the idea here is that now they're using a better system. Now the business does not fully depend on you. If someone contacts you and they bought something, but for whatever reason they didn't get access, or they bought from you years ago and they forgot how to get access, or they want a refund, or they want to buy something else, or they're asking about a certain feature, or they're going to upgrade something else and they want to know if they upgrade, do they get this and this and this. So first of all, instead of them emailing your personal email account, now they ask these questions in the ticket system. And by the way, Zendesk has a monthly fee, but if you can't afford that monthly fee, you can use something called OS Ticket. And just to throw in a bunch of more keywords at you, if you have a web host that uses a tool called cPanel, which most web hosts do. And if you don't have one of these, you can go to doubleagenthosting.com and join for a web host there, and that will give you a cPanel account. Now, in that cPanel account, there is a button that should be called Quick Install, and you can install this free help desk solution called OS Ticket. And what I like to do is, if possible, install the help desk solution in the support folder of my website. So if my website is backupcreator.com, then by going to backupcreator.com/support, then that is where the help desk system is in place. Okay, and so here's the thing about this whole help desk system thing is that, okay, it sounds good in theory, right? Because you can go in there and you can answer questions that come in. And maybe if you have a business partner, then maybe now you have both of you coming in and you're kind of doing a tag team, and you just, whoever happens to log in, whoever sees the ticket first, just go ahead and answer it, and then they just clear it up that way too. But then what happens if maybe you hire your nephew or something, right? Then you hire your nephew to be person number 3. Well, nephew comes in, and what's nephew going to do? Maybe he'll log in, and he won't always answer tickets. Maybe he'll log in, and he'll answer things, but he'll kind of mess things up and answer the wrong thing. Or he'll be like, I don't know how to answer any of this. What's any of this internet marketing password kind of stuff? If someone says, I need to get a refund, well, like, couldn't there be a step-by-step process for someone to go through? They say, I want a refund. Well, the first thing is, what do you want a refund for? Which product? The next thing to figure out is what is your purchase ID, right? Like, what's your email address, or what did you use to buy from us? The next thing might be, are you eligible for a refund? Like, have we already given you the refund? Are you within the refund period? Maybe you can ask, what's the reason for your refund? That way we can keep track of why people are refunding from us and prevent that in the future. But so now we're getting into like a 4 or 5 part checklist of someone to figure out and look at the input that's come in, and then based on that input, figure out what the response should be. And one of the coolest parts about literally every help desk system out there, so if you don't happen to use Zendesk or OS Ticket, the idea is the same, this thing called a canned response. And it's exactly what it sounds like, right? You have a list of maybe 5 or 10 different responses, like it says, like maybe a few sentences worth of text, and so you can just go to a drop-down menu, and then based on what comes in, then you know what to respond from them. So you could say, okay, well, you would like a refund. We're sorry you asked for a refund. Can you give me these 4 pieces of information? And answer me as much as you can, like what email address did you use to purchase? Optional, do you know what the transaction ID was so I can quickly look up your purchase? What product was this for, and why did you want a refund? Well, cool. Now someone just drop down and boom, respond to that. And so now what this help desk is turning into is we start seeing, okay, we at any given day we could have people writing in for different reasons, like we're saying. Either they don't have access to one product of ours, they want a refund from a product of ours, they want to hire us for coaching, there's a technical issue, right? Just off the top of my head, those might be 4 different things. And so it now becomes a game of, based on what this person has written in, what should the canned response be that we click on? Or maybe it could be, who do we assign the ticket to? Because now here's where it gets interesting. Is just in my business personally, I'm the programmer, and then my business partner Lance Tamashiro is the accountant, right? So if someone writes in, we have a third person who we pay on an hourly basis to go and look at messages. And if someone asks a common question, like if they have a question about, for example, our paper template plugin, and they'll say, well, will pages I make on paper template display correctly on mobile devices? And so and the answer is yes, and we can say, okay, yes, it will. So that can be one of the canned responses. Then someone might write in and say, asking about our Backup Creator plugin, they might ask that when they use Backup Creator, will it back up the content and the users and the plugins and the files in the site? And the answer is yes and yes and yes, all those different things. Someone might write in asking about our Webinar Crusher course, and they might be asking when they get the GoToWebinar account that comes included with Webinar Crusher, is that completely theirs? And the answer is yes, they log in, they have their own unique login, their own unique name, they can run unlimited webinars, but if they ever cancel from Webinar Crusher, they also lose the GoToWebinar account. So these answers I'm just coming up with here, these are not me just bragging to you, but they are the common questions people come in. And usually it's just asking for reassurance, and there's all these sales that we would be missing out on if we didn't have a help desk to answer some of these things. And then the other thing too is there's a couple of little caveats or gotchas or things like that where we need to tell them about these things, like if you cancel this, then this will happen and stuff like that. Okay, so people need to identify what message gets the response. And so the way you can start this off is, like we said, first of all, you transition from email to a help ticket system. That's the first step here, what we're talking about. The next thing is that now you based on, and you don't just make a bunch of canned responses just because, you start answering questions yourself. And maybe you'll have a second business partner, but definitely not a third or a fourth or a fifth yet. Or for the first couple of weeks, it needs to be just you answering stuff. And this is called growing pains. It's called you do a little bit yourself to save yourself a bunch of extra time and work later. So you answer these help ticket systems, and I'll just use that as step number 2. So first, you transition from email-based support to a help desk ticket support. Okay, step number 2 is you answer tickets yourself, and then after a couple of weeks, then what you can do is when you have maybe 30 minutes free, go back and look at the tickets you responded to and figure out if you can group some of those together. And you look at all the things you responded to, and some of them might just be, you might notice that there are 2 or 3 types of responses that you send that encapsulate maybe 80% of the messages that come in. Okay? And don't get crazy just yet. Just try to find 2 or 3 because now you're going to have some messages that come in that need responses. Okay, so if someone asks like a pre-sales question, or if someone asks how to get back into your members area, then you might say, okay, well, based on the product you asked for, here's the URL to the members area, and click on the lost password link, and then that will get you back into our membership site. So let's just call that 3A. So 3A will be, you're going to figure out maybe 2 or 3 responses of what, based on the messages that come in. So some messages come in, they just need a response from you, and that's it. Now for 3B here, we're going to talk about assignments, let's call them, okay? So that means that you hire that $5 an hour person, and they see the messages that come into your help ticket system, and let's just say that maybe 5 to 10% of the messages that come in, they have no idea what to do with, right? And so that might be if someone goes and they install our paper template plugin, and they say, well, I installed it and it didn't work, and this happened. And so, and usually when something like that happens, either maybe their web host is not a good web host, maybe they have things locked down, or maybe there is a conflict with a bad theme or a bad plugin or something. And so that's something where they need to assign the help desk ticket to me, Robert Plank, who's the programmer. Okay? And so in that case, the issue comes in, and then now they assign the ticket to me as the programmer. And then for 3C, we'll say that there are, procedures. So 3C could be something like a refund request. Someone says, well, give me a refund. And we have to say, okay, well, what's the reason and what are these details? And then we can move on from there. And what's cool about this is, so with the procedure, there might be a little back and forth. And if someone comes back with the information and we don't trust that $5 an hour worker with access to our account, then that 3C becomes 3B, because that help desk worker then assigns the ticket to Mr. Lance Tomashiro, our accountant, so that the message came in and that $5 an hour person sorted a few things out, and Lance can just go back in and just look at it and get it all done in about 5 seconds for his time. So, okay, this all sounds good in theory, right? Because you go and you switch to a help desk ticket system, and then you see the tickets coming in, you answer them yourself, and then you go back and look at what you did, and then divide either the responses, the assignments, or the procedures. But now, how does that help me? Well, the way it helps us is because now we can just create a quick Word document, or I prefer a Google document, that says, here is a list of maybe 10 possible things that come in. And if a help desk ticket comes in and it does not match any of the 10 things, then assign it to me anyway. So this way, anything that comes in, most of it, 80% of it will be handled by this help desk person you're going to hire, but then the remaining goes to you anyway. So you still, you never fully removed yourself from the business, but you have removed yourself as much as possible. Because, what would happen to you if you got hit by a semi-truck tomorrow? How much of your business would be lost? Well, if the business is all you, then it's all lost. And now your family has to fend for itself income-wise. Kind of a scary thought. If you have a business partner or two or three, is that partner now locked out from this or that? I think sometimes, well, what if my business partner, Lance Tamashiro, gets knocked over tomorrow and just dies suddenly? Well, can I still get access to everything? Well, we have a shared password manager called LastPass, so I could probably log into the server and things like that. But as far as the accounting, I think he's documented that. I'm pretty sure he's documented when he runs payroll or figures out the taxes or this or that, where things are. As far as getting access to certain bank accounts, I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure. Or if something happened to me, well, let's see. Well, Lance could then hire a programmer to replace me, but would he really know where all the source code is? Well, I think so. Would he know what I do to compile our plugins? Well, I think so. If a certain issue comes up, would the programmer then know where to look? I think so, but we're never 100% sure, and we don't want to drive ourselves crazy and create problems that aren't there because we still have a business to run. But let's think about that. What if something happened to you? Could somebody pick up and go through the checklist? And sadly for a lot of us, our business dies with us. I don't think if you're just a one-person business to expect your kids or your wife or something to start become internet marketers. But if you have business partners, then maybe that business that you have collectively can continue without you, and vice versa. If your business partner dies, that way you're not screwed over. So you have a Word document or a Google document, and when I talk about a Google document, you go to google.com/drive, and that's basically a Word document in the sky, a browser-based. And just like a Google Calendar, you can one-click share this Google document to any other Google user, right? And so having a Google account's free, and if you have a YouTube account or a Gmail account or whatever, you have a Google account. It's all connected now. So you can create this Google document and you can share it with other Google users. So if you have a business partner, you can share it with editing privileges. So you and this business partner can just create your own changes, and you can easily see who wrote what in the document and roll back to earlier versions, all that good stuff. If you hire a new $5 an hour worker, you can share this with only view privileges. So now that new hourly worker can only see what you together have written. So you make a Google document just there for that person to identify what message gets what action. If it's a response, then it's okay. If they ask for a refund, then you go to this can of response that says refunds. If they ask if they need extra coaching, you click on this response that links them to the form for your coaching. So we don't want to get too crazy, but it's just to identify what message gets what action, what response. And usually it's just a response, or it might be if this looks like a programming related issue, then click on this and assign this to this person. Or if it's a procedure-related issue, and if it says that they want a refund, we'll now respond with this response, so we get this information. If the ticket already has this information, then assign it to this other person. So it's either a response, which means that the worker replies to it, an assignment, which means they reassign the ticket to someone else, or a procedure, which means that they might have to respond until that leads to no more responses, or just assigning it to the correct person. So we just want to start with just a couple of responses that encapsulate most of the messages that come in. But over time, you might notice that if you have a large organization, or not large organization, but if you get 10 or 20 or 30 tickets per day, that really piles up, right? And you might notice that well, if you have more than 10 canned responses, then you might now need to segment these or prefix this or categorize or whatever you want to call it. But you now group these canned responses together so that you can easily have a handle on things. So an easy way for me to explain this is it might be by product. So we sell a product called Backup Creator, and we sell a product called Paper Template. And so there might be maybe 4 different technical questions about Paper Template that can just have a quick canned response. Like we said before, can Paper Template pages display correctly on mobile phones? Another one might be what web host will this run on? Another one might be what email providers does this connect to? But we don't want to invent things. We just want to look back at previous tickets and create our responses based on that. But if we look at our Backup Creator plugin, and there are 4 or 5 different things that we can respond to about that, and 4 or 5 things we can respond to about Paper Template, now we don't have to sort through 10 or 20 or 30 different responses. We can just say, okay, if it's about Paper Template, that narrows it down to this just 4 or 5 ticket or responses, and we can apply that response to our help desk ticket. So usually by product. So to recap before we move on here is number 1, move from email support to help desk ticket kind of support. Number 2, answer these tickets yourself for a couple of weeks. And then number 3, go back and figure out what are A, the responses, B, the assignments to particular other help desk operators, or then C, the procedures to respond back and get to the point where either no more responses are needed, or you can now assign this to the accountant or the programmer with all the information already there in the ticket, in the conversation. So how does this all work? Well, you go to google.com/drive and create a new Google document, and then you have a blank page in front of you. Write down today's date, and then post 3 quick sentences in your marketing about what you'll need to know about later. And so don't share this right away, but just start collecting, just for today, 3 little tidbits about little quirks that you will forget later that you need to know. And I'm not talking about passwords, okay? Don't store passwords in any kind of Word document. Don't write your passwords down. Use a password manager such as LastPass so that those are all safely locked away. But what we want to do instead, and also the other thing too, is we don't want to share like the crazy ideas or the doodles from your notebook that you'll cross out or throw away later. But for example, like we said earlier, what steps do I take to record and publish a podcast? Or maybe it might be something like, how about with I have a tablet called an iPad, right? And with this, I can get a text message on my phone, and the text message also appears on my iPad. But the first time I set it up, I had to fumble around and go online and find some YouTube videos and some articles and do this about 5 or 10 step process to make it all work. And so I will probably need to know that again in a couple of years, but I don't want that to be on a scrap of paper somewhere. So I just can open up this Google Drive document, type in today's date, and say, to get my text messages synchronized to my iPad, I did these 5 things. If I can say to get my Google Calendar to synchronize to my iPad, I had to check these boxes in my browser, I had to log into my iPad, I had to type these things in the boxes, and I had to do this one thing so that they all appeared properly. So we're just writing down, and we're not, writing pages and pages, but just maybe for today, just a couple bullet points about little quirks that you will for sure forget in a year if you had to go back. And so this might end up somewhere in, say, that master Google document for your help desk operator, or it might just be for your personal use, or it might even be so that if something happens to you, your business partner or business partners can see what you were up to, so they can have an idea of where to go and look for different things, right? So if you stored your stock photos, your layered logos, or the recordings to your courses in such and such Amazon bucket, or in such and such hard drive, at least they'd have something to go on. Or you might say, maybe for another example of a quirk is, if you've ever used a WordPress blog, you might say, well, today I got a WordPress white screen of death, right? Suddenly my website was all white and blank. So to fix it, I logged into my cPanel, I went to the file manager, and I looked for a file called error log. And if that wasn't there, I went into my WP content temp/plugins folder, and I created a subfolder within that called temp, and I dragged all my plugin folders into that. And by the way, if this is going over your head, that's okay. This is just like the steps I would take if my WordPress site crashed, as an example. So now I can go back into my browser and say, well, does my WordPress site load? And if yes, I can go back to that file manager screen, drag my plugin folders out of that temp subfolder, then go back to the plugin screen in WordPress, and one at a time reactivate the plugins until the WordPress white screens again. And when I activated such and such plugin, the WordPress site white screened, and I knew that was the problem that was crashing my whole entire site. So I went back and I noticed that there was a more recent version of it, so I blew away the old plugin and installed the new plugin. Okay, so I do this even for my own programming, and I'll make a Google Drive document, and I'll post today's date, and I'll say, I fixed such and such issue in Paper Template. Okay, so I'll say the CSS template and Paper Template for the webinar opt-in page was not displaying correctly. I fixed that. So that way, I can go back, or someone else can go back and say, well, this Robert Plank guy, he's doing little bits every day. Now we can see what he was working on which days. And by the way, just as an aside note, this might even help your personal life and your personal issues. And I've just noticed that, from just life experience in general, if I've ever been super upset or stressed, or just something's been pissing me off, or I just feel like I'm a little bit lost or just directionless, writing a quick diary entry, even just on paper, to verbalize those thoughts and get a handle on what it is I'm thinking and feeling helps so much. But anyway, back to the regularly scheduled programming. So many people want just the ego trip of hiring a team, hiring employees. I'm just a delegator. Everyone else does the work. But the problem with being just a delegator is that no one is going to do it as good as you. And I mean, you definitely get to the point where you can't do everything yourself, but I think that you need to do some of that stuff yourself at first, so that when you make the directions for it, you make that checklist, you make those canned responses. Now those canned responses make sense. So think about this. If you were to hire someone, and by the way, a great place to hire someone is a site called Upwork.com, just because they can install a program on their computer and it will share what their screen looks like while they are billing you for time. So they can click a button and say, now the clock's ticking away, and every few minutes a screenshot of their screen appears. So if you hire someone to write articles for you, well, then you will be seeing screenshots of the article in process. And I think that a big mistake people make when they hire employees and things like that is they don't get their employees to create an X per day, to create something per day. Here's what I mean. Is if you were going to hire someone to be your Facebook ad manager, well, hire them to create a new set of 3 Facebook ads per day. So that way they're not just creating one Facebook ad and kicking back. That way they're not just dilly-dallying for a month, and then at the end of the month they rush and make a bunch of stuff. Okay, if you learn about in our income machine product how to make a thank you page and an opt-in page and things like that, what if you hired someone to once per day to look at your site? Okay, so like we have a site called Backup Creator. What if once per day we had them whip up a quick short report and a quick landing page and a quick download page, and every day that was just all they did. This on Monday I figured out a new angle for a free gift, for a free report, and created a new opt-in page so that if someone was looking for a certain problem, like how to secure a WordPress blog, or what are the top WordPress plugins, or how do I back up a site, or where do I get web hosting, every day they would just choose one of those topics and make a quick report and just compile the answer to that, and then create a download page to link to that PDF report, and then create an opt-in page to say, if you want the answer to this problem, sign up in this email form below, and then now they'll get to that problem from search engines, they opt in with their email address, they get that report. So that way, think about that. If you hired someone, even if you just hired someone on Upwork for 30 days and that was it, at the end of 30 days, they would have created 30 reports and 30 opt-in pages just for you. What if you decided you wanted to make a podcast for your business, just like I'm doing right now, talking to you? Well, you could hire someone to make a podcast, and you can say, here are my books, here are my blog posts, here are my articles, here are my stage presentations, here are my webinars. Listen to a random one and figure out a 5 to 10 minute podcast episode and just record one short podcast per day. Well, now, at the end of 30 days, they would have created 30 short podcasts for you. And isn't that way better than hiring someone and then you kind of wonder what the heck they were supposed to do? Now, you specifically told them, do one of these things per day, and now at the end of the month, you'll have 30 of those things. And if in the first couple of days they're still not doing what they're supposed to be doing, you can get rid of them. If after 4 or 5 days there's still 0 podcasts, well then it's time to let that person go. Or if you hire someone as an article writer and after 7 days you don't have 7 articles, you don't have to keep hiring, you don't have to keep paying them. But you have someone that they can create something for you that is finalized every day and verifiable, so that way you can see they actually did that thing. So if you hired someone for 30 days, there should be 30 landing pages they made, or 30 autoresponder emails they added to your sequence, or if you hired them to contact 10 people per day, there should be a list of 300 people they emailed or sent postcards to, or called on the phone, or sent Facebook messages to that they contacted for joint ventures. But think about that, is that you have this thing called a checklist to get a certain goal completed. You journal, or we can call it document, the things that you do, just a few quick things every day, and then later on go back and systematize the parts of those that are important, and most of it won't be important, right? Some things like, how did I fix my WordPress blog, or how did I fix my iPad, that might be just for you to go back and save yourself the next couple of days to do it all over again. Or in fact, when I redo my computer, I have a list of the programs I usually install. But this just saves us a lot of time later. And if later on we want to go back and save time and have someone else do the things that we normally do, we can look at those little bitty pieces and say, based on the help desk tickets that come in, usually the answer is one of these 5 things. So now, looking at the help desk system, here's what you do. So the tools we talked about today, we said Zendesk if you have money, OS Ticket if you don't have money, and OS Ticket is in the cPanel area of doubleagenthosting.com once you create an account. The best thing about Help Desk is that you can mix and match different operators. So you can have just you answering tickets, bring your business partner, and then hire others to answer different tickets. So you move from email to help desk ticket system, you answer the tickets yourself, and then you go back and group the categories of either responses, assignments, or procedures. But it all starts from writing these quick journal entries. Just get an account at google.com/drive and create a Google document and go in and write down today's date and post 3 sentences about something you did today. Okay, and so we have a whole system called 4 Daily Tasks, which you can find out about at 4dailytasks.com, which just means that every day you're going to do 4 things to improve your business, and usually 3 things are the most important things, and 1 thing is a quick 5 to 10 minute task, which might just be sending an email to your broadcast list, or it might be making 2 quick phone calls to a potential joint venture partner. But I would say that out of the 4 things you do, 1 will probably be like a continuation of some kind of long-term activity. 1 might be putting out fires. So I'm pretty sure that even though you probably do 4 things a day, you'll have about 3 sentences worth of things to talk about. Like I said, I, as the programmer in our business, will say that I went in and fixed this bug in this product. If you're the accountant in your business, you might say, well, I went in and I refunded these 5 people, and I fixed the accounts for these 2 people, and I ran the spreadsheets for this particular month, or I paid out these affiliates in the affiliate program. But don't spend too much time, but just spend a minute just listing a couple sentences about what you did that day, just so that if something happened to you tomorrow, the other people involved in your business would have some idea of where to go and look for these files or these spreadsheets, or they just wouldn't be completely lost, and they wouldn't have to redo your last several years of work just because you didn't spend a couple of minutes writing it down. I'm Robert Robert Plank from The Robert Plank Show. This has been journaling and documenting the amazing and almost too simple shortcut to killer productivity, multiply results, and increase sales. If you have a question or a topic you want me to tackle on this podcast, The Robert Plank Show, if you want to be a featured guest, if you want me to interview you on The Robert Plank Show, send me a quick email at robertplank.com. That's ROBERT at ROBERTPLANK.com. And I look forward to hearing from you, but just keep the message short, and it might end up might be forwarded to the help desk, but either way, I will get back to you about that. Robert Plank Show, get out there, make some money, build those websites, get that traffic, make those sales, and have a lot of fun doing it. Have a great week, have a great day, have a great next couple of minutes, and thank you.